I'm Anna Golc, I'm one of the customer success managers here at Appraisd. Some of you may know me. So the main topic that we're going to discuss today is performance matters for our board and board. And we are joined by our esteemed panelists. We've got Tom Blake, Joanna Roddy, and Anna Golc. They are going to introduce themselves shortly. After that, we're going to have, after the panel discussion, we're going to go through some product updates, which will be led by Roly, our CEO and founder. Also, Phil Durant, who is our tech lead, and Richard Barrington, who's our customer success lead. But now I'm going to just hand it over to Roly, who will kickstart the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you very much, guys, for coming along. We had a good chat the other day to sort of warm up, and I hope that wasn't, we didn't peak too early. I think it was great. So thanks very much for joining. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in just a second. But yeah, we're here to talk about getting board level buy-in to performance management, because often I think it's seen as, it can be seen just as sort of an HR process. It's forms for people to fill in, but actually we all know that performance management is a fundamental part of doing business, and obviously it's a board level concern, but we're here to kind of talk about why it sometimes isn't seen like that, or perhaps why investing in this kind of work is hard to get approval for or get buy-in on. We often talk about how it should be top down, set good examples from the top, but it can be kind of hard to get that in practice. So here we are to discuss it. I've got a great panel with people with a lot of experience, two Appraisd customers and one not. Possibly maybe one day.
I can try to sell you into customers.
Yes, good. Okay, so would you mind just telling us a little bit about let's start with you.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting us and being a part of this discussion. I'm Anna. I work for Casio Electronics. I'm a HR business partner with 15 plus years of experiences in HR. And my experiences with performance management is a long journey, but it was predominantly the first and foremost project that I was employed for Casio, to making sure that we do have one and it's working. So inherited Appraisd as a system deliverable for performance management, and that's how the relationship's been going on for 2 or more years now.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jo?
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. I'm Jo Roddy, longest title in the world. I am a twice implementer of Appraisd. So where I was previously, I introduced Appraisd into the business after kind of tendering, and then that was one of my first jobs at Gulf International Bank, where I've been for a year now. Was looking at a performance management system, and this one popped into my mind when I was set that task. So we've gone through actually implementing Appraisd really successfully into the business again. So we've got about 120 staff all embracing and using it fully.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm Tom Blake. I'm an independent chief people officer and executive coach. What I do with my clients is I help them understand what organisation performance is all about. So that key question of actually how are you going to achieve what your board want you to achieve, and then actually how do you get all of your teams aligned around that. So a lot of that does come down to performance management, whether that's systems, processes, or just a philosophy around performance within a business. I was working with a client. This is how I came across Appraisd. So I'm not a customer, but I was doing a piece of work with a client where we had Appraisd to come talk to us, and Roly and I share a very similar philosophy, so he's now not be able to get rid of me and kind of rules me out of conversations, which is absolutely fine because it's a topic I'm very passionate about, which is this key thing of how do we make organisations successful.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, well let's kick off, and just a reminder, we want anecdotes, horror stories, success stories, and anything that kind of makes this real, because it can obviously talk about the theory, but also the kind of the practical experience is really fantastic as well. And I thought maybe since you could start off and just see if you can answer the question, how did you or how do you get the board to buy into performance management, given that I know that you've had some interesting ups and downs?
Yes, indeed. They were challenges, and I'm not saying that we have overcome all the challenges just yet. It's an ongoing process. However, my initial approach to performance management, it was to evaluate whether the problem sits with the system or with the process. And I started having conversations with the leadership team, asking them what was the burden that they haven't used before, didn't use, they didn't follow up the process. The first and the most important answer, it was their time and the admin burden. Basically, that's how they see it. So at this point, I knew it's going to be an educational piece to try to change the mindset and present the performance management not as a task and a tick box exercise, but actually as a core center and everything for your company and for your culture. So Casio has been on a journey to set up the new company values, very ambitious goals in the next coming years. So we started embedding the values into the process, and that started to be a selling point. Learning and development in a core center of everything that we do as well, and that was a selling point to the managers. Simplifying the process, yet again, it was demonstration to the managers that it doesn't have to be a burden, it can be employee-led, and also to explain how important it is to have that meaningful conversation. It's not about filling and completing the form, but to have a process that will actually mean something to the employees. So everything was on the back of employee engagement survey results as well. The learning and development was lacking, career progression was lacking, so we started analyzing all the data and embedding this into that process. Having the managers on board, it's a work in progress, I shall say. However, we have succeeded after the cycle. We have succeeded to have all the managers and a full completion of the process. So I take this as a good result.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think one of the things I've certainly found is that often the value in those conversations is really for the employee, and that comes out in the engagement survey results. So they're missing this value of talking about their career and so on. And the managers find that quite easy to forget, that the value that those have for the employees, because they think, well, they're doing fine, they just want them to carry on. But actually, those employees really value and need those conversations.
They do, and that was the driver for everything. Our employees wanted to have those conversations. They were non-existent or they weren't meaningful in a way. So we started training the managers, delivering even internal trainings as well on how to have those difficult conversations. And started pushing this way. So meaningful conversation, and it's all about that communication.
Yeah. Joan, how about you? Do you have to get bored by again, all over again? How would you do it?
To learn from perhaps what didn't go so well first time around. But I've got a very supportive board, which helps. But I think when I joined, everything was on paper, and it was very much painful, not just for HR but for everyone involved. And I think what we wanted to do was there had been a lot of work already done where I am now on culture, values, and behaviours. So we kept it as simple as we could, and I think that was important to the board, that we didn't radically change with a new system. So we kind of kept the process as it was, but we wanted to focus not on it being, as Anna said, like a tick box exercise. At the end of the day, the board want to achieve their strategy. They want to get their targets, they want to achieve all their goals. So we very much worked on the Appraisd was our way to facilitate continued improvement, not just in the individuals, but in the business results as well. So we did things like actually taking the business plan and kind of making the strategy part of the objectives, building that into the Appraisd system. Help of Roz in there, who gets a call from me every few months saying, can you tweak it a little bit? So it is just starting off very simple, really stressing to the board that this is about facilitating those great conversations, not just once a year, but absolutely on a regular basis. So using the check-ins, using the feedback methods, using the recognition wall for those of you that don't know all the little bits and pieces of Appraisd. There's so much it can do, but start simple and then slowly add that functionality in, so you make it part of this every day rather than this one day event at the end of the year, which is painful for everyone and doesn't add any value for anyone involved in it either. So
okay, and so you said you had a supportive board. Yes.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Does that mean they're already sold on the idea of investing in these conversations?
They're really invested in the people, and by making this about developing our people to deliver better and better results, always improving. I think that was really key. They're a board that are very, very interested in what's going on in business, not just from delivering kind of the results, but in terms of how engaged our staff are. I was talking about the engagement survey, the culture of the organisation. Anyone in financial services, that's kind of a key word at the moment, culture, but our board are really bought into that already. So that just really helps when you're actually, if you can say that this helps meet those things that are important to them, it's definitely keeps them on the journey.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Tom, what about you?
So I think picking up that for me is the key thing. It's finding out the hook. What's the hook that the board are actually bothered about? So we talk a lot about culture. Banking was bothered about culture 20 years ago. When I was in banking, as well, much has changed. But it's still working on culture. But for different businesses, that hook is going to be different. So, for example, my last client that I was with was PE backed. They've been PE backed for about a year, and the PE firm, who then become the board, didn't really have a good take on human performance. They weren't quite sure, are we actually delivering what we should be delivering? The CEOs are bothered about data, so you start looking at all of the different things that your board members are bothered about, and you just start talking their language. So you can start, and very much what I did with this particular company, I'm starting to talk about, well, wouldn't it be great if we actually had a system where we could have the data, and actually the data being relevant, up to date, good quality, because we've all worked with systems, we all know the phrase shit in, shit out. You don't want shit in your performance management system. So what does that then translate into? So a performance conversation, and I've probably got this wrong more times than most in other companies, where you kind of start in with your chief executive, your board game, isn't it great, we're going to do all of this stuff, and you just see this person kind of get this glazed look that it's just really overwhelming. Start small and then kind of open the conversation up. So if we want really good data, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, if we want really good, high quality data, that means something different. That means training line managers to have good conversations. But is this the original idea, is it coming from the board, or actually is it coming from your employees? So engagement surveys is a great place to start if people aren't getting what they want from their careers because they're not having decent conversations with managers. Well, you've then got your burning platform. But I think embarking on any change with any business, you've got to understand, well, what does the board want out of this first of all? What are they trying to achieve? Our board, they wanted assurance that we would actually be able to hit our objectives. So we took it on that angle of, okay, well, what does that mean? Why isn't, what's been happening in the past, why doesn't that give assurances to us actually hitting objectives moving forward? And this particular company, it's because the culture was too nice. So nobody was prepared to challenge anybody or have difficult conversations. Everybody was rated a 4 or a 5. So much so that they even changed the rating system, so it's just like a 3-point rating system, which is, for me, that's playing around the edges. But what that meant is that we were stifling innovation. That we kind of got to this crux of going, well, we're not innovating very well because we haven't got people critiquing each other's piece of work. We've got people going, oh, isn't it great? Just being a bit too nice. So we tried to start to get under the skin of it, and we got to a point saying, well, actually, our managers aren't really trained very well to talk to people about what needs to be better, what needs to be different. So having a program that sits behind how you do that and with the system supporting it was, from my perspective, hasn't always been the right way to go. I'm just quite glad that the performance management systems are a lot better than they used to be 20 odd years ago when I first started doing some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think something in the past perhaps they've actually, got in the way of the conversations
100%.
rather than supporting.
Yeah. That once-off year-end conversation gets in the way of everything. And it pisses everybody off. The only other day of the year that pisses everybody off is bonus payout day, if you have one of those, because nobody ever gets what they want. So you just spend a crap load of money just for everybody to go. Right. But that's all about expectation management, which you can then bake back into how your managers are talking to people on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that I also wanted the business to recognise, because we all do this, we all kind of go, people aren't having performance conversations because they're not ticking the box at the end of the year. Actually, flip it on its head, managers are talking to employees all the time. Managers don't recognise the conversation they're having is actually a performance conversation. As soon as you sit down and go, how are you getting on, what support you need, that's a performance conversation. So helping people understand what is and what isn't a performance conversation in the context, for me, is also quite key.
Can I add to that? So it's kind of tying into that as well, is what was a really important message is we actually wanted our employees to own their own development as well. So it wasn't always from the manager. So we're kind of giving both a tool, because this can absolutely be employee driven. If they want to talk to their manager, then book a check-in, use the system to kind of actually facilitate that and enable employees to drive their own development and achievement of the goals that they want as well, was quite key.
And I echo what my colleague said as well, learning and development in everything. We've introduced performance development plan within Appraisd system. There is so much more you can do actually. It can be, the great thing about the system is that it can be unique to individual businesses. So it will deliver what you need for your culture. And the PDPs now and learning and development is in every step of the way. So we always we've got quarterly cycle, 2 very short forms, 1 slightly longer half-year review. We've also linked this to succession planning as well. So we've embedded a form for the leaders to actually complete, helping us as HR team to understand who is ready for the promotion for next year. So it won't be reactive approach, but it will be actually planning and succession. What would happen if this person left the business? What training do we need to deliver to the successor? And every step of the way, that question: how would you like to do any more training? What training would you see for yourself? And then it's employee led. Not everyone is ambitious to get to the point that they want to have professional development. They may have some personal learning aspirations as well, and we enable that as well, because to us and for us it's a development on the individual level. So it very much has been employee-led process right now.
Can I ask a quick challenging question on that, perhaps, which is the evidence shows that employees like to have feedback on the whole. Like, if they want feedback, they want to know what to do to get ahead or to get whatever they're aiming for. They value those conversations with their manager, but maybe not all do. So if it's entire. So when you say employee-led, is that kind of it's sort of employee-led, but if you don't lead it, we'll push you to do it?
Encourage is the
With that big stick.
push is a negative, so encouragement, yes. We do see this in a different division as well. There are different needs. We've got a team that is not necessarily interested in any development, but yet again, we will still encourage them to pick on anything, whether this is goal objective related or whether on a personal level. Yet again, that initiative, it's for your own good, for your own development. But if someone really doesn't want and someone is stuck in the way, then we just have to respect, and we just have to manage, or the manager has to manage like individual on an individual basis. So there will be, it's not 100+ people approach. It's very much as well a little bit more individual. Tailored.
So I might take that forward a bit, because while I agree to an extent that things should be employee-led, I think when we talk about organisational performance, it's actually the organisation's responsibility as well as the employees. So the fact within the system, I think one of the good things is having the ability there for an employee to go, actually, I want to book a check-in. I think that's great, because I think that gives a certain level of empowerment to individuals, while I'm just kind of sitting there going, well, I don't really know if I can talk to my manager about this. Kind of almost having it as an option. Oh, I didn't realise it was an option, I can do that, that's fine. It just gets people to think differently. But employees are not responsible for the development of the organisation. They don't know what the business strategy is saying to do in 5 years' time. They're not equipped to know what skills and capabilities we need for the future. That's where the business actually does have a level of ownership to start setting out, this is what we need to do in the future. I think the business also has a responsibility to spot those people that might be, actually, do you know what, 5 years' time, your role probably won't exist. So actually, how do we help transition you into a different role? So while I agree there is an element of personal-led development, how do I get better kind of doing my job? I think some of the evidence that I would probably throw in as well is when it's too employee-led, employees think hierarchically. They just think, how do I get promoted? I want to be a head of. I've been out of university for 3 years. I now want to be a head of what you've got no life experience. I'm absolutely waiting. I keep saying this to a few clients. I'm waiting for a job title to appear that's head of paperclips, just so that someone can be head of something in the day, because that's their motivation. But they're not seeing actually where the business is moving forward, and that's where managers do need to come in and step in and drive some of it. Because sometimes you'll have people that are disengaged for it, and actually you need to provoke them in a constructive, supportive way to actually, have you thought about doing X? Have you thought about doing Y? So I think there is a kind of balance and a joint accountability.
I think from an HR perspective, I guess a lot of people at HR, that you are able with Appraisd, you can actually, by looking at the usage of Appraisd, you can kind of pinpoint your, I won't say tactics, it's not so, but you can pinpoint your conversations with those individuals or managers that perhaps, if someone hasn't logged in for 6 months, I'd probably try and engage with them and just try and understand perhaps what does make them tick, and how we could support them, and how could we perhaps unlock that individual's desire to want to look at what they're doing and maybe improve or develop a certain area. So it's quite powerful in enabling you to kind of tailor your approach, even on usage, I think.
Exactly. So in HR, you have limited time.
Yeah.
You want to deploy it doing the most kind of high value stuff, which is not sending to all emails.
No, no one likes
make sure you blah blah blah. It's calling individuals and coaching maybe and encouraging and so on, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I'm curious to know, just tying it back to the board and the buy-in. Is it a range of these different kind of components that you're selling in, which is, I'm going to be able to be more effective in my role in HR. Employees are going to have more career conversations. Is it a range of things, or is there anything that is really the sort of golden ticket that gets you?
Yeah, that's definitely helped, being able to say to the board that you can tailor your approach, rather than kind of getting another 3 people on the HR team to deal with everybody. It's being able to tailor your approach. They're quite down to quite small detail.
I think the key really comes down to what is your board looking for. I don't think there's one answer. I think it's very contextual, and it really depends on who is on. Because actually, if you have a change of board membership, so your business is staying the same, but the people are different. So I've had conversations with boardrooms in the past where I really don't care what you're doing in the business. I just want to know that actually what we're paying people, how we're paying for performance, and actually what we're delivering, they meet. is what we're paying actually represented? So is there some level of return on investment? Boards don't particularly want to have, I'll do the elephant in the room, boards don't particularly want to have a conversation about systems. They don't care. They don't care what system you use. That's down to the teams actually selecting the system. The board is not going to sit there and go, let me log in and let me have a go at it. They just want the reassurance that what comes out of it is valid and it's going to help drive value for the overall organisation. And I think that's kind of one of the keys, is to have that conversation about, because I've had this challenge from the board as well. It's like, well, okay, we'll have people putting data in, but how can we be sure it's quality data? And actually, that's a really good question, because at the moment, the technology across the world isn't quite there, because what I'd love to see is an AI bot that sits in there. I was talking about this to the guys the other day, that actually then gives you a level of, actually, this is quality, or is this just Tom needs to turn up today? Oh, look, I checked a box, there's something in there, the system is recognising this information. So I think it depends on what you board want. Some financial services that I've been in, it's going to be more along the lines of, if we're going to spend X, what do we get? What is our core return on investment? So trying to work that out is a bit challenging, but you have to come up with some core metrics that's going to help you drive that. If your challenge today is about actually employee engagement, well, actually this is a way to solve that issue. So it really depends on what it is the business issue is at the time that actually companies are equipped to get.
Yeah, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned return on investment, and I want to sort of tackle this head on, and I was going to ask if anybody here has had to come up with a return on investment. Literally spend £1 on this system plus the time to implement it. How many pounds do we get back as businesses? Has anyone ever had to submit anything like that? Yeah, I hear no. Yes, okay. Because it's something that we hear when talking to new prospects a little bit. Is occasionally we'll have someone say, right, I need to put a spreadsheet in front of the board and say, if we spend £1 on this, we're going to get £10 back, or whatever it is. I'm just wondering if you've had any experience with that, or whether you think it's
so I have
very difficult.
I think it is difficult, but I kind of draw a parallel to marketing.
Yeah.
So in marketing, if you spend 10 quid on an advert, you've got no idea what that's going to bring back at all. There is no way to track back to go, that £10 advert generated that revenue. So again, it's about talking the language of the business, because finance love to kind of go, we're going to give you money, tell us how much it is. But if you're struggling with that conversation, partner with your marketing team who've got budget in the past by presenting arguments. It's argument-based return on investment rather than financial-based return on investment. And they're two slightly different things. And that's the way that I've approached it, because I don't think there is a way to go, if we spend X on a performance management system, it is going to bring Y in revenue or whatever. But you could talk about efficiency, you could talk about time saving, and you could try and do some level of cost calculation. But I think that almost is selling it down the wrong way. I think you need to be open about these things to go, is it really actually achievable? But find people in the business that have got business cases signed off where it isn't necessarily a straightforward £1 in, £3 out. Yeah.
One approach as well, if I may add, it may be as well on the employee engagement. Once again, it was the biggest drive for our organisation as well, and it's the retention. And potentially the cost of recruitment for replacement of those people. So if you make that investment in having the right processing in place and measuring the performance and giving people the opportunity in learning, yes, there will be another investment because it will be learning and development, potentially the cost. But your replacement cost, and it's not only the recruitment cost that you will pay to the agency, it's the actual knowledge, the company knowledge that is irreplaceable in everything. So that could be an argument as well. If you will have a good performance management process in place, it potentially may extend your and keep your staff in, and happy employees, then obviously they will stay longer. They will be more effective. There will be efficiency. So that could be the ROI as well.
Yeah.
I agree. It's really hard to put a kind of a financial amount on there, but certainly talking in terms of headcount, time saving, retention, all those sorts of things are quite key, because you've got more time then to do the things that do add to the business achieving its strategy. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
£12 is a hard thing.
I was going to ask, sometimes we think about developing products, you think about pull and push factors, or what are the factors that pull people towards your products. They can see a vision of a better future, plus push factors pushing them away from the current situation. I wonder if you tried anything like that with a senior leadership team, to say, this is what it could be like, and by the way, if you don't do it, this is how it's going to remain, and these are the problems, that, these are the dangers. Are there any dangers of not embracing performance management that you can sort of?
I think there are. If I think back to a couple of clients ago, we were kind of having similar conversations. The danger question is quite a good one, because it kind of, I think is quite a. I think you have to be in a very particular space in your relationship with the person that you're having that conversation. It's a bit challenging to turn to a CEO and go, look, it's all shit. Everything's going to hell. Everybody's leaving. I think you're right. It comes back down to what are your core metrics actually saying. So actually, if your turnover is quite high, and all the feedback that you're getting through your exit surveys is along the lines of, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my objectives are. If you're getting all of these indicators that say, actually, the answer is effective performance management, we're the team that are coming over that, what the answer is, that's actually your leading to go, well, how could we be more successful as a business if people did know what they were doing? Would that mean greater efficiency? Would it mean we could come up with better products? Would it mean that we can actually diversify customers? How does it actually tie in? And also, you could just have a very human conversation with the board to go, would you like to work in a company where you've got no idea what you're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis? We forget that board members are humans as well, so it's kind of tapping in kind of at all levels. But yeah, absolutely, with any kind of business case, you kind of have to paint the dark because you're trying to get somebody to buy into something. But I think sometimes, particularly in this area, we're almost trying to go a bit too overboard and go, it's shiny, possibly isn't the way to go. It's about just trying to get that emotional connection back in, to go, actually, let's look at what it is like today. One challenge I gave to another client who they were looking to invest, but they weren't quite sure what they wanted to do. We actually just started putting some of the processes in place, which you can do with a small group. So my background is I've worked for organisations around 10 to 20,000 people around the world. So you take a subset and go, actually, let's change how we do it there. Yes, it's going to be a bit manual, that's fine for now. It's actually what you want almost as a proof point. You almost want to go, look, this does work. The effort that it takes to do it manually is X. So if we could get a system and then replicate this across the business, actually the efficiencies then kind of work out for themselves. So sometimes boards might want a bit of a test case, and if you've got an area in your business that is a bit more progressive that would want to, it might be a bit of a pain to try and do things manually for 6 months or a year, but it might be actually worthwhile investment.
The approach we took as well at Casio was that whilst the performance management process was implemented, all the forms and the creation was basically, it was simplified to the point that we reduced the admin points for the managers. However, we presented them as a HR team, we presented them with the forms, how they could look like. So they had a time to actually contribute as well and feedback. I like this question, I don't like this question. That was a way of their participation as well. And we always rely on the continuous feedback throughout the process. Even now, after completing another cycle, there is a survey coming out. What do you want to change? What works? What it doesn't? The real good thing about Appraisd is that it can be customized. You can remove, you can almost tailor to you and take a full cycle. There is no golden solution for your quarterly process or however like it's going. It's going to be changing because your culture will be changing with that performance management having in place as well. So there will be more elements that you will need. There will be something that is unnecessary. And yet again, the many functionalities managers, they don't really value in Appraisd as well. They are notes that you can put, simple conversations, everything is pulling together. So many functions, the danger of not using it. Our managers very often, they do forget that they are receivers as well. They are employees. So they ought to have that feedback from someone above them as well. And I think that was one of the selling points for them as well, because it started to be like, talking about the head off. So our divisional managers started thinking, what's then for me? Where can I go as well? Could I have this as a conversation as well? And persistence, from your side, persistence. Just keep going, checking that quality objectives as well, because the quality of the content is very important.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. I think just on that, getting feedback from the users, the people, population, I think is really important. We often talk about it being an iterative process, and like you said, Joe, start simple and grow from there at a pace that suits the organisation. I think is really important.
I think you make it not something that's not something that's done to them. No one wants something done. You're having your appraisal done to you as well, but you make appraise kind of their tool. It's theirs, and that actually by being able to shape what's on there as well feels much less unpleasant than something that's really done to them.
Yeah.
So I think I agree that the gradual changes in accordance with the feedback that you get from.
And actually, you know, people used to say, they've gone and changed the system, the process again, but actually, no one minds if you improve a system or a process or a template or whatever it is.
It's not an HR system, it's
exactly
everyone's.
Yeah, it's a business story, how you do business. Yeah.
Customize and make fun as well. There is on your dashboard, you can have a message to them as well, how to just make it fun. Depending on a different organizations, there will be different selling points. The marketing will be more visual for a different industry. It could be more figures. Another selling point as well is to introduce maybe a little competition between different departments as well on the completion rate. That was definitely something that it helped in our organization. So there was a little bit more of, if he did that well, then next time I'll do it well as well. So make it a little bit more fun rather than a very rigid process, and it will go long way.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I think we've probably got time for just a couple of questions. If anyone has any, we'd like to shout out any questions for our panel. No? Okay. you can follow them afterwards. Thank you very much indeed. That was very, very important and really interesting. Thanks a lot. And So what we're going to do now is we're going to move straight on, but if you would like to grab something else, please do. We're going to move straight on to the next part of our community event, which is an update from Richard and Phil.
Hi, hello everyone, I'm Phil Durrant. I am the technical lead at Appraisd, so I'm sort of in charge of coding and writing the software that you hopefully use. Just want to talk through a few things that we've been building this year that we hope will be pretty useful. So the biggest project we've been working on is HRIS integrations. So we partnered with a company called API Deck, and what they do is they take all the different HRIS systems out there and put them into one sort of unified box, which we can then read from the box and put them into Appraisd. What that means is we can hopefully integrate all of these systems. So these ones we've got working currently. Validating basically means we're just checking that the data that comes from them works. The big one we find is sometimes they don't include manager information, that's just pretty critical for Appraisd. It also means we can, costing to be discussed, quite quickly integrate a new system. So if your thing is not on the list, please let us know if you'd like to use this, so we can work out getting it on board quite quickly. So this project, it's been in the works for a little while, but it's brought up some interesting things. So our initial hope was, okay, it's got in the box there's things like first name, last name, email address. That's all dead simple. They just go straight into Appraisd. There'll also be some things which maybe in the HRIS is called one thing and Appraisd is called something else. Again, it's pretty simple. We just do a little interface. When it says title, it goes to position. Great. Then, as these discussions go on, we find that actually you get a lot of stuff that looks more like this. There's some sort of idiosyncratic realities in your HRIS system, and then Appraisd has got a bunch of things that are really only interesting to Appraisd, which are often the most useful things. Things like administration groups, review cycles, job descriptions, default forms, default workflows. They're all things that are make Appraisd work really well. And if those are set up well, Appraisd can be really, really great. You're a manager is I'm going to start a review, and there's just the 2 different forms that are perfect for that review to happen. If it's not set up so well, they'll have to pick from all the forms in the whole company, and then you're probably going to go, I don't want to do that. Actually, there'll just be 3 default forms, and they'll be never quite perfect for anyone. So we really want to make this process seamless, because probably the information in there, things like department, role, title, maybe pay grade, all of these things combined tell you the answer, but what's in the question mark is the trick. So that discussion, then we quite quickly realised that isn't just a problem with this HRIS integration, that's a problem for everyone. Even if you're just typing in each user individually or posting in a spreadsheet, you still have this question mark. You might have policies in a document, but then you're relying on whoever's the person doing the typing in to read the document, understand it, set it correctly, update it when things update, and that's just a hard problem to solve. So what we came up with is, hopefully this is vaguely familiar, these are the things as they exist in Appraisd. We call them the custom 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, but then you can write in the name. We will let you combine these things in hopefully more or less any way you could think of to set these things on the right. We possibly could expand this list too if there's sort of demand for other things. What that looks like, there'll be training sessions and stuff on this, but this is just to try and give an idea of the sorts of things you can do. So if you had an admin group where you wanted to put the senior leadership team into one admin group, but everyone else just in admin groups based on their region, you could say, okay, we're going to look at the department and the position to achieve that senior leadership. After that's been done, we're just going to do everyone by looking at the country field and just go, okay, they're in European countries, they go in the European group. If they're in North American countries, they go in the North American group. So the rules-wise, they're priority ordered. So if you match this, you go in this one. If you don't match this, you go in this one. So senior leadership people in Europe go in senior leadership because it's on top. A couple of other interesting little things it can do. It can cause a user not to be added because of a failure condition. So that can either be just a check. The one we come up with is, we keep telling people not to add any contractors to Appraisd, but we do. But if you've got a field that says contractor yes, no, you can then go no. Throw it out, whether it's not error in for this example. But that's the idea, is that you can just go, if you haven't matched any of the conditions that I put, this is a problem, and we shouldn't continue with this user, there should just be an error, and we'll do something about it. We also have default rules, so if you've got 5 complicated cases and everyone else goes into the other group, like everyone else has the other form, you just reset that at the end. So we've been thinking about scenarios, and this is more Richard's domain than mine.
Yeah, so a common scenario that we found where it's been a little bit tricky on the admin side in the past is particularly new starters and probation cycles. So it may be at a very simple level, everyone that's a new starter goes into probation. That sets up a certain number of reviews on a cycle, and then after that's done, they get kicked into the normal cycle. Now, if we take that one step further, we have clients with offices all over the world, and probation can be quite a legal thing in different countries. We've got one where European staff, for example, are on a 90-day probation. US staff are on no probation at all, because probation is not a thing out there. But they have, I've got a client where they've got staff in Bermuda that are on 180-day probation. So we can set up the rules based on this, so that everybody that meets the European, based in Europe, goes in the 90-day probation cycle. Those in Bermuda go in 180, and then those in the US just get the new starter check in and then kick into the normal cycle. And when we take that a step further, it's historically, once someone had passed probation, you have to manually move them out the probation cycle and put them in the regular cycle. but we can create a rule now that says, right, for those staff in Europe, as soon as they hit day 91 of their employment, automatically shift them into the regular cycle. So you're not having to do any admin, aside from defining those rules in the first place, to ensure that your staff are going in the right cycles and having the right reviews automatically set up by the system at the correct time, which will hopefully remove the possibility of human error in ensuring that people get the wrong reviews, but also remove a huge amount of admin burden in terms of making sure that reviews are set up at the right time and people in the right parts of the system. So that's one use case, and the one that we see is probably the most common and most universal. Some other interesting ones we've come up with are some companies may decide to use our sign-off feature, where a review goes to a person to sign it off after the manager. They may say that, right, everybody in this department gets signed off by the department head and so throughout the business. So we can say, right, look at their department and then assign this person who's the head of that department to sign off all of those people's reviews. Again, removing the need for you to do that manually and remember who should be signing off each person's reviews. A couple more technical ones. We really advocate that people use single sign-on. It's a big, it reduces a big barrier to people logging into the system, having to remember email addresses and passwords. But some businesses may have parts of the business where this is all set up already, but they may be integrating a new business they've acquired or new teams that aren't quite ready to set up single sign-on. So we can have a rule that says everybody in these parts of the business log in through single sign-on, and we can have an exception for these other people where they still log in through email address and password. Again, all automated to keep things really, really simple. And another slightly more complicated one, you may well just use our job descriptions feature. And you may be able to come up with a rule that says everybody in this department, at this pay grade, in this location has this job description, and then we can automatically assign those job descriptions to your staff. We can extend that to default forms and the like. So provided you can write the rules, come up with a rule that says this person should get this thing within the system, we can build all of that into the integration, or even as Phil said, if you're adding users manually, you just fill out those few key fields and everything else populates. And it reduces the complexity of all of your admins having to remember all of those rules to make sure people are put in the right place. So hopefully keep things a lot simpler and easier to manage. And for those that are doing things on the integration, we have people using our API who've built out their sort of custom integrations in the past. It allows you to hold that logic in Appraisd, somewhere that's really easy to update, rather than having to go to technical teams and developers to have them go into the codes and update the actual code of the integration, which tends to be quite a time-consuming and expensive process. So it allows you to manage that in a lot more simple and easy to update way.
So one of the cases that Book mentioned is that this is applied everywhere that you add users to Appraisd. So one of the things you can do is let managers add users to Appraisd, but obviously managers, we don't even give them the option of setting things like forms and admin groups and stuff, because it's just they wouldn't understand what it means. This means you can get, as long as you can get them to tell you the information that they should know, like the department and the pay grade and that sort of thing, as long as you can map them in, it will just automatically apply all those rules, so you don't have to go in afterwards and go like, okay, well they've all gone default admin groups, so I need to go and put them in the right one.
One of the big things that we see that causes processes to break down is rubbish data, really. People having the wrong managers, wrong forms, being assigned with the wrong thing, and then first of all it makes a review not happen. You then have to go and find out why is that review not taking place, and someone turns around and says, oh, because they're managers. I don't see them in my team or so in the system. So hopefully this will remove those little data inconsistencies and ensure that the process runs smoothly, and it enables you to focus on having good quality conversations with the right people and the right questions, rather than getting bogged down is the actual underlying data structure correct, and are people being assigned with the right thing and the right conversation to have. Within Appraisd, for those of you that are Appraisd customers, you'll know that all of our different data tables, you can apply some quite complex filtering options on those to segment down the data in ways that you wish. But we do appreciate that sometimes it can be difficult to remember what filters to apply, and also share that information with other people. So we've been working on a project at the moment which we will be making available in beta for people that want to try that out in the next few weeks, to allow you to save your filters and create custom reporting dashboards. So this screenshot here is an example of a basic save reports page where we have some reports that this user, Jenny Jones, has saved for herself, but also made available to other people. So it gives you easy access to new reports, and then you can build on this. And you can create new reports from here, and I'll show you a little bit what that looks like. So it's easy to access your reports, easy to iterate the reports that you already have, and also to clean them up. You've got archive features and things like that. This is a very simple example where we've saved the report of training needs added in the past 30 days. So once you've set that report up once, it's very easy to go in, run that query again, and quickly see the new data that fulfills those criteria. If you want to refine this report further, you might want to filter down on particular keywords in this report, and then save that, either overwrite this report or save it as a new one. So it's very easy to start with a bigger report, apply new filtering options and save it as new reports, and build up that bank of reports for yourself, but also share those with other admins. So those reports can be visible to yourself, but more commonly, you'll set up a report that all of your admins can access. Or you may even extend that report to managers so that they can run those reporting parameters and see the data for their teams. So it puts data at people's fingertips, makes it much easier to access reports and see the insights that the panel were talking about earlier. Ultimately, you want to be able to access the data and take the actions based on what's happened in the conversations, and it makes it really easy for you to have that data at your fingertips and create the reports that you need to answer those questions that you have around the performance within your business. So another example here, you can create reports in certain parts of the app and take them to other places. So here it's quite small, but we've created a filter or report which is probation joiners in 2023. I've loaded that filter into the reviews tab, so I can now see all reviews for the probation joiners in 2023, and then you can filter that down further. For example, I now actually just want to see in progress reviews for probation starts in 2023 and save that as a new report. So it's really easy to grab a big report, apply new criteria to it, and save additional reports from there. This is what it might look like when you've started building up your bank of reports. So we can maybe able to see here there's a whole lot of different names. So we've now got all of our reports here that have been added by different admins and all shared with each other. Some interesting examples of reports you might want to run here. We've got the basic ones, so we've got lists of year-end reviews for the past couple of years. Once you have one of those, it's very easy to open it up, change the date filter for the following year, and save it as a new report. Really easy to access your list of reviews, completion rates, etc. Now, taking it a bit further into the sort of interesting data that's gathered as part of those, we may see a load of 9-box grid reports, and we may filter it down and show low potential on the 9-box grid. So you can easily pull out and see those where there may be a problem and low potential within the business as evaluated by the manager. To touch on a point that Tom and Anna and Joe made earlier, linking objectives linked to the EMEA growth strategy goals. If you wanted to pull up and see, right, we have a company goal, which is a EMEA growth strategy. We want to see all of the individual objectives that link to that goal, and within that report, see how many there are, what's the status of them, and you can start to look at the questions of, right, we have this overall goal, how many people within the business are working on something to do with that goal, and what is the progress towards that. So it can maybe give you an idea of, are we likely to achieve that goal based on what the individual employees in the business are contributing to it. A few other interesting ones, users who haven't logged in for the past 90 days might allow you to go and have those conversations with the employee and the manager and say, look, you haven't logged into the system, therefore you haven't looked at your objectives or had any recorded performance conversation in the last 90 days. Here's a gentle encouragement to log in and start re-engaging with the process. Now, a few other features that some of you may be using, and many of these were touched on in the panel discussion earlier. So at a very basic level, we have instant feedback, and this is designed to be quick and in the moment, so somebody can log in, give some instant feedback for a colleague, and just, you might have been in a meeting with someone and the person did a really good presentation, you just want to give them some praise for how well they did that. You can quickly do that in the moment. But then if we take that to a more advanced level and we build on the sort of in the moment feedback and take it to the sort of recognition stage. So this is designed to be a bit more public. many companies may have sort of public recognition and a recognition wall, so you can quickly go in there and recognise one or more people for something they've done, and you want that recognition to be public so other people can appreciate them for what they've done. An example we have here is recognition linked to values. You may want to set it up so that you're really embedding your values in the organisation and encouraging people to recognise their colleagues when they've done something that particularly lives up to one of your company values. We found it's a really good way to make sure those values are front and centre, and it encourages people to really make sure they're living and demonstrating those values through their work. You can add custom guidance and things to the right-hand side here. We've seen people embed videos to give a little overview of what people are expected to do with recognition, how they're to use it, and what circumstances they're to give it. We can also pull in that instant feedback or recognition into any of the forms within Appraisd, so check-ins, reviews, so it quickly puts any of that feedback front and centre when people are having those performance conversations. The next one, and this was touched on a lot earlier, the ability to link an individual's objective to your company's strategic goals. So this is a very simple example where we have a drop-down that puts those company goals front and centre. A big challenge that we've seen people say to us is, we have those company objectives set, but it's not always that well communicated throughout the business. We don't necessarily have the right visibility to all of our staff on what the overall goals of the business is actually working on. So we can embed those in the objectives and ask people to choose which of those strategic goals their individual objective is contributing to. So we're making sure that we have that alignment throughout the business and everybody is setting objectives that are actually all pulling in the direction that the business is looking to go. We can take this a step further and have, it's essentially a filter drop-down list. An example of that would be departmental goals. So we can say, which departmental goal does this link to? And it will show you only the objectives for your particular department in there. So you can use it and tailor it so that people can only see relevant things for their part of the business. Finally, many organisations, or I'd say probably most organisations these days, use one of or both of Microsoft Teams and Slack. We have apps for both of those, which means you can get your notifications within those systems. You can see an overview of your reviews and your objectives within the system. And you can also do things like give instant feedback, make notes of Appraisd directly within those applications. Are there any questions for me or Phil on any of the stuff we've talked about, or indeed anything to do with the product?
Okay, I'll give you a question.
Yeah.
On the probation piece, is there a way to stop the automation of somebody passing? So if somebody's having an extended probation, or which happens quite a lot in companies, somebody didn't have a probation review. So is there a way to make sure that that kind of manual intervention can happen?
Yes, but you need to set it up to do it. So one way to do that would be to set like a flag on it used to be like there in an extent. Like if the rule could be if the field was extended probation, keeping the probation cycle over and above the time-based rule.
Yes.
Can you do it for like a disciplinary as well, like make a disciplinary cycle in the same way you could do probation or just a regular one?
Yes, although at that point it would, I'm not sure whether it would be, well, I don't know, that would be an interesting, whether or not doing it automated or manual would be a better case. Interesting.
A lot of that would come down to, are you storing that information somewhere in the HRIS, in which case looking at automation may be the way to go. But if it's more of a manual case-by-case thing, it may actually be simpler and less complicated just to take those manual interventions. Hopefully it's a relatively small number of people that are in that situation, so it may well be easier just to manually create a realignment check-in or a PIP on a case-by-case basis.
Anyone struggled with having data in the HRIS that is not always was hard to get hold of, or perhaps dealing with other parts of the business where you've got another HRIS or a region that actually keeps all their people data on Excel, and you've got regional admins typing that in, but then some of it's feeding in centrally as well, and trying to combine that into like a whole view. Any kind of nodding heads on that? I certainly know I've worked with customers where you say, okay, how many employees are there? And they can't tell you. So we know this is a problem, especially affecting the larger organisations. So going back to the integration thing that Phil explained very nicely earlier, was where we've got organisations that do facilities management, for example, and they've got regional administrators in shopping centres all over the country, and they don't necessarily all communicate between them on what are the sort of rules governing performance management within the organisation and how they coordinate it. So they end up doing their own thing that can sometimes mess up somebody else and so on. So having all the kind of the rules all set out in the system and automated is a huge kind of benefit for them.
It is worth noting it's less common, but you can integrate more than one HRS with your appraised accounts. If you do have parts of the business that use different systems, it is possible to sync multiple.
I've got a question. Can you have multiple managers feeding into the reviews inside of them?
Yes, so we allow up to 3 sort of reviewer roles on a review. Typically, the most common of those, we have a sort of primary manager, a matrix manager, and maybe a sign-off, but we do have the ability to use those roles in slightly different ways if you need it. We have clients works in the sort of, I think they work in the energy sector out in Asia, and they have people have a manager. The managers sort of rotate on and off every 2 weeks, so they put both of them on the review, and then whichever one happens to be on site at the time is the one that conducts that review. And we've been able to work with them and build out rules that say, right, this person works in this part of the business, therefore they have this reviewer process, and somebody else has something slightly different. And they've had their review cycles automated now for 3 years, and everybody seems to have the right review every time. So touch wood, it's all working as expected.
Can you have different appraisal forms for different levels in the department?
Yeah, you're not limited. There's no limit to the number of forms that you have, and we can restrict different forms to different parts of the business. So, two particularly common examples we have there. Some people have a manager form and a non-manager form with a few questions around their leadership and sort of mentoring capabilities. Another common one is sort of competency-based appraisals, where different parts of the business will have different skills or competencies that they're asked to sort of self-evaluate on.
And I think that's the thing, what we're trying to enable here is sort of personalisation at scale. Because if you, as Phil said, if you are faced with a generic list of things that you could do or prompts that could apply to sales, finance, tech, everyone, it just becomes meaningless. So being able to, but in the past it's been very difficult to achieve personalisation across a large organisation. If you're using Word docs, impossible for you guys in HR to manage and coordinate. But now with these sort of rules and systems, you can actually achieve that, which makes everyone feel like they're just seeing the stuff that's right for them and nothing more. It makes it so much more kind of meaningful and powerful.
We can move to more continuous review cycle when you have lots of check-ins. We're trying to enable our people and managers and everyone concerned in the process to go in and do as much as they want to do. So we have some people that will go in who will have a check-in some month. They might have it once a week. Some people will do it fortnightly. Some people do it monthly. Some people will do what we're moving towards, which is the very least a quarterly check-in of some description. What I don't want to have to do is I don't have to be constantly setting up new forms. So when somebody closes out a form, then there has to be a new form available to them to do another check-in. So am I able to do them? Can we set up a check-in form that somebody can use as a template and replicate each time? So they can go in, pick up the check-in form, complete a check-in, record what they want to, and go in, pick up, etc., etc.
Yeah, exactly. So the stuff we talked about there is on the sort of formalised review cycles where the business says, right, we need these people to have reviews at this time. But many or most clients these days supplement that with check-ins that are employee or manager led. So we can give them both a button that they can click to set up a check-in at any time, and then you can control which forms are available to them, or you can have the same forms available to everybody. So some people might well have a work-related check-in that focuses on their objectives. They might have a career one, they might have a development one, they might have a well-being one. The people can pick the right conversation they want. And we recently developed a whole suite of new check-in forms. So if anybody is interested in that, we're more than happy to share those. And they focus on all different topics. I think there's about 12 or 14 in there that people can use for different things as they wish. Yes.
And I think we're looking for people who want to get in touch with us and give these features a go. So it could be the HRIS integration, could be these filters and reporting that Richard talked about, something like that. So please just get in touch with your customer success manager, and we'll get it sorted. We are going to. I want to tell you a little bit more about my thoughts on performance management and how performance management systems might go, and with a view to kind of informing the kind of distant or much near future for Appraisd. And this is where I need your input. And I think we've got about 15 minutes. So what I thought we could do is, first of all, has anyone not managed to try the Slido app thing out yet? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the thing up on the screen in a minute. Hang on. I'm going to do it in a minute. Introduction first. Okay. So, I don't know if this rings true for any of you, but let me show you some recent and not so recent headlines. This is in the FT a few weeks ago. Sorry. Big article about management culture. This one's actually from a few years ago, which shows that nothing has changed. Okay, bad management plays a part in the UK's poor productivity. I don't know if you know, the UK has one of the lowest productivity rates in Europe, or certainly in Western Europe, and it took a big dip in COVID and has not risen again. Various reasons for that, but one of them is considered to be management. In the UK, the cult of the amateur management. Okay, this totally rings true for me, which is that you're just expected, if you're a sort of good person and you're sensible, you can be a good manager. And it's almost, you shouldn't need training. Maybe a little bit of topping up, but you should just be good at it. Bad management. This was from a couple of weeks ago. This prompted 1 in 3 UK workers to quit. 82 of bosses deemed accidental. So 82% of people not getting any training or support or coaching or guidance or anything like that. Anyone familiar? Sound familiar to anyone? Okay. So what is going on? And this really, really interests me because I see, Appraisd is, for me, is a place where people go to do some of their managing or think about management. That's where you see your team, you consider them, you think about planning for the future, you think about the conversation you're going to have with somebody. And, it's really why I started Appraisd, to try and tackle this problem. Well, actually, when I started it, which was about 12 or 13 years ago, it was really just because people's experience of systems was terrible, but I quickly realized that actually people's experience of performance management as a whole is generally pretty poor. And in the 12 years I've been doing this, it doesn't seem like much has changed. One client said this to me, which I thought was really interesting. He said, out of 100 managers, my organization, I've got 20% maybe who are natural managers. They're fantastic. If they don't have a system like Appraisd, they'll be great managers anyway. If you give them Appraisd, they'll take it and run with it. Then we've got 20% who maybe should not be managers because they are maybe not really that interested. They'd rather be an individual contributor. They're fantastic at billing legal fees or whatever it is, and that's fine. And he said, where I see Appraisd really helping is with the middle 60%. These are probably the accidental managers, people who need a bit of help and support. And I'd be curious to know whether this you simply sort of sympathise with this view at all. And I think this is something where we can really help as Appraisd. I think what's we've spent probably about a decade talking about employee engagement and employee motivation, giving employees a sense of purpose, hoping if you do these things that they'll stay, they'll be motivated, they'll be productive. And all of that is absolutely right and very, very important. But often the kind of implementation for getting that to happen is via the managers, and they're often sort of neglected a little bit. I think management can almost be seen, middle manager is almost a kind of dirty word. And I think we need to change that, and I think Appraisd could help, and I sort of want to try this thesis out on you. And so I think we already do that with Appraisd to a degree. We make it really easy to have the right conversations and to remember to do it, to see the value in doing it, make it really easy to give feedback, to encourage behaviours of managers that they might not have had in the past. Like the panelist said, if you show someone a button, they feel empowered to use it. And if the button says give someone some recognition, they will start to think, maybe I should do that. So we are doing that to a degree, but could we go further? And I've got some ideas that I want to run past you. Okay, so this is where the audience participation comes in. And I have no idea if this is going to work. Okay, but what I'd like you to do is get the app, or you don't have to download any apps, you just need to sort of QR code that link. Now, if you can't get it, Emily has sent you all an email with a link in it. You can just tap on that, it's probably easier. So if you're looking at the screen now, hopefully in a couple of seconds, you will see a series of these possible ideas, which I'm going to talk through. Can you see that, anyone? Yep, okay, great. Now, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to tap on these. You tap on the one that you think is most interesting and could have the biggest impact first, and then the next one, and then the next one, and you can stop after 3 if you like. But while you're looking, I'll just read you through and try and sell these, pitch them to you, okay? So the first one is taking e-learning out of wherever it is, probably in an LMS or an intranet or something like that, that's focused on management and coaching techniques, and putting it in the system where you actually do your performance review. So suppose you're about to have a check-in with somebody, you're a bit worried that the last check-in you had wasn't very effective because you haven't seen the change in behaviour that you wanted for that person. Maybe it's time to watch a quick video or listen to a podcast or do some e-learning or something like that about exactly that scenario. So really, really focused, bite-sized learning just in time. Okay, so that's the first one. My theory being, that's where Appraisd is where you go for management, that's where you get your management training. 2, personality profiles. I don't know if you've ever done Insights or MBTI or any of those psychometric tests. But quite often they go in the bottom drawer and are forgotten about until you leave the company. Many of them will help, they claim to help with team dynamics. So, if you manage, to take a very simple example, if you're sort of red type and you've got someone in your team who's green, these systems will tell you how you can motivate and excite that person. Now these tools, again, always sort of left in the bottom drawer. Would it be effective, do you think, to be able to see that in Appraisd, so that you can see that before you go and set the objectives for that person? Okay. Then the third one, I don't know if you've seen things like Ezra, where you can get video coaching from a professional, sort of just in time, or you can set up a series of coaching sessions with someone, and Ezra is an app you would buy for your organisation, and people have access to a certain number of hours of coaching. Again, I'm thinking, could that be delivered through Appraisd as well? Maybe actually looking at the data that's on the screen, at the objectives that you're setting for your people. Number 4, bringing in actual live data such as financial data, sales data into reviews. We already do this with some customers with Power BI reports, but so that those reviews are more objective and based around data and less about the manager's opinion of that person's performance, more about what's there on the screen. Number 5, using generative AI, such as OpenAI or ChatGPT, to help managers set objectives, come up with milestones, maybe assess the quality of reviews. We know it's not perfect. It can, we'd obviously be using a third-party tool, but I think that could be very exciting. Number 6, pulse surveys, giving managers feedback. So kind of bringing maybe something focused around management, kind of engagement type pulse survey, focused around your management style into the app that you can then react to in your next check-in. And then number 7, maybe actually the most effective thing is traditional management training. If you're thinking about your managers and how to get them, into great managers, do you believe actually the best thing is to send them off for a 2-day training course and then come back to the office with great ideas? I'm skeptical on that. Or other. Right, okay. So if you could all vote, that would be great, and I will reveal the results. And then maybe we'll just have a chat about the top result, and then we'll stop because we're running out of time. But then if you want to stay on and talk about any of the others, we'd love to do that. Okay, so you just need to tap on the one that you think is most important first, and then go after that. Any last votes to come in? Okay, so let's see what didn't come up. I don't know how to get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so management training, the traditional management training is near the bottom, along with bringing in data such as your CRM. We won't spend much time talking about that. Generative AI, halfway up. Micro e-learning, and we've got the top there, personality profile, so you can understand your team, and just-in-time life coaching. Okay, so just to get a quick bit of feedback before we wrap up on the personality profiles. I would love to know, is there anybody here who's already doing this, obviously not in Appraisd, but has used personality type indicators effectively for the teams? Yeah, over there.
Yeah, so I took a real interest in it a while ago and became the Discovery Insights facilitator. So I've been doing that for a few years, including with the company, and Appraisd is the company I work with. And I found it really useful, particularly for, as well as general team development, management development. Yeah. It's always been really useful to me as a tool to help people, as a self-reflection tool. That's the way I see it, it's a self-reflection tool. It's not really about training as such, it's a tool that managers or individuals can use to reflect on how they're doing, their own style, their preferences, and how they might be able to adapt themselves to different situations and different people, particularly different employees and stuff that they might have. So I found it super useful.
Do you think it could be something useful to have a kind of a refresher on as you think about managing the individuals in your team and the conversations you're going to have?
Yeah, I think so. I can see that, because I think what it helps you to do is it helps you to see each of your team members as human beings rather than just resources there to utilise. Because I think sometimes the process can feel a little bit robotic. It feels like you're going through this like checklist of things that you're working through. So we're going, do you do this? Do you do that? How well do you do this? How well do you do that? And I think we've all spoken about at some point within the conversations here about getting to understand each person as an individual and what makes them tick, and using that kind of terminology. So I think bringing an element of that into the appraisal, the PDR, to start to think about this person, think about not only skills, knowledge and objectives and things like that. What do I need? How can I support this person? What can I do for this person? How can I help this person knowing what I know about them as an individual? Because everyone could have very similar needs in terms of aspects of knowledge and aspects of skills, but actually everyone's going to be very different in terms of how they actually respond in certain situations, how they communicate in different ways, and how they work together and collaborate. Everyone's very individualistic, and I think that part quite often gets missed within this process. Something that just in a very simple way, I wouldn't want to overcomplicate it at all by any means. Anything that can bring that view to that manager of the individual, of their personality, of what makes them tick, and understands how they need to start a conversation with that person, understand how they can communicate effectively to get the outcome that they want. So if somebody isn't performing how we want at the moment, how I'm going to set myself up to have this conversation with this person, knowing what I know about them as an individual. Yeah, anything really simple. I think.
Great. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think it's also you've got to be self-reflective as yourself as the manager on how maybe your actions have impacted them. So we do a 360 one at my company where everybody gets a Hogan review and that the results are shared with the company, so you can see how, as maybe a junior member of staff, your managers kind of where they are good and bad and what their good and bad points are, so you can kind of adapt your working with them. Because obviously if you go in as the manager thinking that you know everything about the individual, but they don't know anything about you, then it's like a really one-sided kind of, they might think that you're not being your genuine self kind of thing. So if they know, oh, this is X really trying to help me here because this isn't how they usually do it, and they're obviously, that they're delivering this in a different way than I know that they maybe normally would, then they can see kind of that help where they're coming from and that actually it's important kind of thing. So that kind of 360, not just seeing the managers top down, but around is helpful.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's good in a group situation as well as a one-to-one. So I set up teams quite a lot. It's about every individual recognizing what every other individual is like. And so if you have your judgments and decision-making and perspectives, that's absolutely fine. Somebody else will have a different one. So setting up teams, this sort of thing I found is really useful for everybody to recognize who everybody else is and where the team strengths are and where the team weaknesses are. So I'd merge it with group work as well as one-to-one.
Yep. Okay, how are we doing for time? I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to call it there. Emily, would you like to wrap up?
Just want to wrap up. Just a massive thank you all for coming today. And a massive thank you to our panelists, Joanna, Anna and Tom. Really appreciate it, really insightful. Great to hear about your experiences, really valuable, so thank you so much. We're really trying to build this community where we're trying to get our clients and prospects into rooms like this to really talk about performance management and specific topics around it. So if you have any ideas or any topics that you would like us to discuss in a in-person event or even during a webinar, please email us, and we really want to get any of you, even just if you would like to join a webinar and also be a panelist on a webinar, that'd be fantastic. We've also got a new community webpage, which is www.appraisd.com/community, which has some resources, which will hopefully, when we get our schedule for 2024 of other webinars and in-person events, we'll be able to book from that page. But again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the panelists, and if you want to stay for some more teas and coffees and patients before you go, that'd be great.
Thank you. And I'm going to put the next question on the slide, I think, which is, do you have any feedback for us? What else would you like to see at community events? Does breakfast work? That kind of thing. So please do answer that anytime you like.
That'd be great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.